Let's bring in my next guest, Louisiana Senator. He is a doctor. Senator Bill Cassidy, great to see you, Senator. Your reaction to the debate last night?
Yeah, I think it's two old guys who both long for better years. One kind of a communist, kind of, isn't Castro great, and the other guy not far behind, but neither one of them, if you will, forward-looking as to where our economy and our society is going.
First, let's break this one down. Biden really went after Bernie Sanders. Bernie praised China, where the coronavirus outbreak first exploded. Biden says China has been a problem, that China actually was basically a communist country. That's what pushed it into poverty. Capitalism brought it out of it. Let's listen to Joe Biden going after Bernie Sanders last night. Watch.
The idea of occasionally saying something nice about a country is one thing. The idea of praising a country that is violating human rights around the world is, in fact, makes our allies wonder what's going on. What do you think the South Koreans think when he praises China like that? What do you think the Australians believe in the shadow of China? What do you think is happening in Indonesia in the shadow of China? What do you think is happening in terms of Japan in the shadow of China? Words matter. These are flat-out dictators, period, and they should be called for it.
And Senator Joe Biden pointed out that Bernie Sanders voted against sanctions against Russia he voted against sanctioning Russia for interfering in U.S. elections. Your reaction to that?
I totally agree with Joe's assessment of where Bernie has been. I would now challenge Joe. Where was he as vice president in the Obama administration for 8 years when China systematically stole our intellectual property, manipulated their currency, did everything they could to move jobs out of middle America over to China? Obama and the Obama-Biden administration did not confront that. They pretended it was not an issue. They actually, I think, passed policies that made it more likely to occur. Yes, Bernie was more upfront, but if you will, Biden was more compliant with what the Chinese attempted to do to our economy.
We're looking also into what works and what doesn't in health systems. We're fact-checking and digging in. Bernie Sanders last night basically was talking again about government-run health care. He was praising it. He basically was saying, yes, we should have government-run health care. Joe Biden said, you're wrong. The coronavirus shows, Bernie, you are wrong. Italy has single-payer systems. Democrat Claire McCaskill agrees with Joe Biden that Bernie's wrong. Government health care would not work in the face of pandemics. Your reaction to that?
We could say, well, in fairness, let's say nothing will necessarily work in the face of a pandemic if the pandemic is so overwhelming. But on the other hand, to say that Medicare for all would be the solution to the pandemic that came here, that is absurd. And we can look at Lombardy, which is completely overwhelmed with resources that are inadequate to meet. We can look at basically the ultimate in single payer, which would be China, and again, we see that it was inadequate to meet. Now, we have to make sure that our system is adequate to meet, but the fact that we have a kind of a fluidity of resources that can move from here to there, that's not typical of government-run resources. That is typical of a private market that responds to a supply-side demand, if you will.
Yeah, we've got some hope. We've got the first vaccine clinical trial today, NIH funding it. It's at Kaiser Permanente Washington Health Research Center in Seattle. Inovio Pharmaceuticals aims to begin safety tests of its vaccine. We're talking vaccine, a big push in Canada, also in Israel, identifying patients out of China with 500 different antibodies in them. Maybe that could lead to vaccines. Would single-payer government-run systems lead faster to vaccines and antivirals? Your reaction?
Single-payer typically squashes innovation. It squashes innovation because in order to make ends meet, you squeeze every supplier of every product. Now, in our system, which frankly we have costs that are too high, but one thing that can occur is great innovation because people realize they will recoup their investment in that which is innovative. That's why the United States has always led the world in innovation, both in terms of how we practice medicine, medical devices, but also vaccines and pharmaceutical products. If there's a cure, 90% chance it comes from IP, intellectual property developed in the United States of America.
Senator, great to see you. Come back soon.
Thank you, Liz.